Mr. President, I ask consent to speak for 10 minutes.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. My friend, the Republican whip, says that we have a clear and present danger in Iran. Well, we're in the 5th day of this war, and so far we have 5 different explanations from the White House as to why we invaded Iran. Iran is triggering turmoil and chaos in the Middle East, that's for sure. But when you listen to these explanations of why we are willing to risk American lives, you wonder if the White House has clearly made up their mind about a strategy. Listen to them. Started with the State of the Union address and the president saying we have to stop Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. There's a bipartisan consensus for that position, but it's hard for this president to explain why in his first term he eliminated the international inspectors in Iran who were making sure that they didn't develop a nuclear weapon. Those inspectors were eliminated by President Trump in his first term. The second explanation of why we are at war in Iran was their development of ballistic missiles. And yet we know that this is reminiscent of the excuse given for the invasion of Iraq years ago. Remember the allegation that there were weapons of mass destruction which could harm our allies, even the United States? Ballistic missiles in Iran are not capable of reaching the United States. Using that as an excuse as a clear and present danger is hard to rationalize. The third explanation of the 5 we have so far from the White House is regime change. Regime change. Well, certainly the Iranian people deserve a regime change, but are we willing to back them up? If they go in the streets and are being massacred and slaughtered like the previous administration in Iran was responsible for, what will we do? Send troops to the streets of Tehran? That has never been explained by this administration. The fourth explanation for our invasion of Iran, given by the White House in this early stage, is that the Israelis were going to do it anyway, and we'd probably be dragged into the conflict. Really? So Israel is dictating America's foreign policy? The fifth explanation I heard on the radio this morning from the president last night. A nuclear war was about to be launched by Iran. Really, with what missiles? What capacity? What weapons? This is a theory that isn't backed up by any type of fact. Here's the reality. 5 days into this war, we've had 5 different explanations of why we're in this war. Let me tell you my experience, having been here on the vote to go to war in Iraq. It is far easier to get into a war than it is to get out of a war. I remember that vote. I remember that night here, standing in the well of this body, when I was one of 23 senators, 1 Republican and 22 Democrats, who voted against the invasion of Iraq. We knew at the time that there was a possibility that a larger war would emerge than just a simple invasion, and it did. For 9 years, we fought on, American soldiers valiantly doing their duty, and many of them losing their lives in the process. It is far easier to get into a war than it is to get out of one. This scattershot explanation of why we are going into Iran does not give me confidence that this administration has a clear strategy, but it does confirm my fear that we have an impulsive commander-in-chief. Impulsive? Remember when he said he needed to have Greenland as part of the United States, and he was willing to defy not only Denmark, a traditional ally of our country, but also the NATO alliance to do it? Our commander-in-chief in Greenland? Even worse, declaring that this nation of Canada should somehow become the 51st state of the United States. For goodness sakes, for decades, presidents of both parties have been able to count on the friendship, support, and alliance of Canada. Now they are in a position where they question whether the United States can be trusted to deal with. That has been achieved by this impulsive commander-in-chief. And of course, NATO. 75 years, the strongest alliance on earth, maybe in history, has kept us out of a third world war. What does this president, this impulsive commander-in-chief do? Threatens the very basis of NATO and whether the United States has a future in it. I can't believe he did this. There are so many countries depending on that NATO alliance, and this president, this impulsive president, went to challenge them head on and really destroy the confidence which we've had with so many of these allies for so many years. That's the reality of the commander-in-chief as we launch this war in Iran, and I worry about it. 5 different explanations in 5 days as to why we're there. Before we ask the men and women of America, the families of America, to put their sons and daughters at risk in a war, shouldn't we have a fulsome debate here on the floor of the Senate? That's what the Republicans fear, a real debate on why this war is being launched. And that's why we have to remind them to pick up their copy of the Constitution and look at Article 1, Section 8. It's only 3 words, but it's pretty clear. The powers of Congress to declare war. To declare war. Many of my Republican colleagues would like to ignore that phrase and say it means nothing. They are prepared to say that we will not have a debate when it comes to this invasion of Iran. That's a mistake. It's a serious mistake. We learned that in Iraq, and credit President Bush at the time for at least allowing us to engage in that debate before there was an active invasion. This president has not. He's launched a war, and now he's saying to Congress, step out of the way. You have no role in this. Ultimately, the Constitution says the American people have a role in it through their elected representatives in the Senate and in the House. I urge my colleagues support Tim Kaine's effort today to establish again what this Constitution clearly says. The power to declare war is ours. If we give it up, then we are turning our back on the Constitution and our responsibility to the American people. I yield the floor.